Hello and good Sunday, everybody. My name is Aaron Jackson, and we are here to start up a political podcast. This is the pilot episode. This is episode one. So we actually are still working on a name, me and my co-host. But we really just I want to start this up to kind of, just talk about all of the happenings going on in the world, what's, important right now to the American people, what's important, what's going on in, current events, kind of, just have a discussion because I think it's very important. So, without further ado, I'm going to introduce my co host, and he'll talk a little bit about himself, and then I'll talk a little bit more about myself. My good co host from out in Las Vegas, Nevada, I should say, actually, Whitney, Nevada, or whatever it's called out there.
Yeah, yeah,
Josh Von Pohl, how are you doing, Josh? Thank you so much for
pretty
joining.
good. Glad to be here with you. Feel like we got pretty good points of view on things. We're gonna mesh pretty good together. So excited to get this going.
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty much just two dudes concerned about the world, everything that's going on. Me and Josh know each other from we went to the same high school up in the Sacramento area in California, and we talk all the time and decide this is something we wanted to start up. We both have done I think our own kind of podcast for different things before. I host a sports podcast talking about high school sports with a couple of people. I've hosted other podcasts in the past. I don't know if I've introduced my full name yet. My name's Aaron Jackson, and I'm 27 years old. In terms of where I stand on stuff, I think generally I'm more to the left. I think I'm much progressive. But there are also some views where I differ, and views where I'm more left, more right. There's some views I have that are very socialist leaning, and there's some views that I have that are more moderate or even conservative on certain issues out there. So I think it's going to be an intriguing dynamic between the both of us. Josh, maybe you could talk a little bit about what you've done before in this realm. Why this is important to you, and kind of where you stand on stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, I really got woken up to like everything politics probably right when Trump came around, but really dove deep into everything once COVID hit and the kind of all the lies that got spread around that from our political leaders and health organizations that we're supposed to trust. But yeah, ever since then, I've just been deep into everything, trying to figure out like what is what's actually true.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, I was a raised Christian up in Placer County, which we both know is very Republican. But I would put myself not in that Republican realm. I feel like I'm definitely more empathetic than most Republicans are, but I'm not as left as you are, though, I feel. So I feel like that's why we vibe very, very well. So you're still able to like talk to me and not get those name calling Republicans. You're coming your way.
Yeah, and that's the thing I think that's so important. We just want to, be able to talk about these, issues and, really explain because I think there's a lot of people out there that do vote that are uninformed or don't necessarily take the time. And I think, we hope to be able to bring this podcast to some people and try to, go over this stuff. And of course, one thing that's important is before we get into all the issues we're going to talk about today, we encourage everybody out there who watches this should do your own research too. Look up
Yes,
stuff
please.
yourself, read stuff yourself.
Fact
It's
check
very
us.
important to stay aware out there and try to engage in the process. I know that there's a lot of people that feel disenfranchised, and we'll probably at some point talk about the reasonings for that and why that's probably even valid in some respects. But at the same time, voting is an essential, I think, right in this country, and I think that knowing what's going on in our world is huge in terms of bettering the lives of not just yourselves but other people in your community. So I think that hopefully we're able to bring that to the people. I should also mention before we start, obviously I've got the American flag in the background. I gotta say, we're going to talk about a lot of issues with America. In some respects, I'm proud of my country, and I'm definitely proud of my country today because we're recording this on the final day of the Winter Olympics, where the United States, we're both sports fans too, just broke the gold medal total that they've ever had in a Winter Olympics, and the men's hockey team just beat Canada. And man, I don't have a U.S. jersey, but the best I've got is a Shark shirt, and of course it's Macklin Celebrini who plays for Canada, so I know that's kind of an oxymoron right there. But we're we're huge sports fans. I know you got the Golden Knights out there, and you're soon to have my former team, the
Oakland
Oakland
A's.
Athletics. I can't even call them that anymore, unfortunately. But yeah, sports are growing where you're at in Vegas, and it's it's interesting that you kind of brought up Placer County and how it's more of a Republican area. One thing that's interesting is over the years, it has kind of become more of a purple county because there's been a lot of people from the
Oh yeah,
Bay Area that have been moving
def-
out here.
and it's gonna get
Yeah.
worse with the new maps that just got drawn.
Yeah. So, yeah, redistricting maps that just got redrawn in
I wouldn't,
California.
I shouldn't say worse, but it's gonna get more purple.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll talk about those redistricting maps at some point and our thoughts on that. I mean, obviously, we're getting close to the midterms, the election and stuff as
Yeah,
we
it's
kind
gonna
of
be
get down
huge.
there. And obviously you living out in Las Vegas, that's also kind of
Very
seems from what
purple.
I've gotten a very purple area
Yeah.
out there. Yeah. So maybe I know you've been out there for maybe about a year, but what's your experience in terms of whether it's just talking to people out there or just kind of seeing even local affairs, kind of how things are out there and just the general vibe of where people are at?
People are very anti-ice out here. The majority of people, like obviously, the left seems to protest more, so it's like they're definitely a lot louder on issues out here. But the our governor is a Republican and our mayor is a Democrat, so I feel like it works pretty good with each other.
Yeah, and I
But
know in the past the governor's been Democrat. I know the state
yeah, yeah, it's
recently
split.
voted for Trump narrowly in the 2024
Yeah,
election, but I know in the past it's swung blue. It's definitely one of those battleground states out
oh
there that
yeah,
gets
for
talked about
sure.
a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about some stuff that's going on in the world right now. Again, some of this stuff is going to be very prevalent to stuff that's been happening in the last week or two. Some of it is prevalent to what's been happening in the last year and still relates to today and is going to relate to the future going forward. So we have four things we kind of want to touch on today. We're going to try to make it a point each week to probably come up with three or four main topics. Eventually, maybe we might potentially, get a guest on to talk about stuff as well. Well, we pretty much just want to, go through what's going on in the world. So let's start with right now what's going on with all this Epstein news. Obviously, recently there's been tens of thousands of documents. A lot of it
And
has been heavily redacted. But the one thing that everybody's talked about is, man, when are we going to start seeing people brought to justice? When are we going to start seeing people actually arrested for stuff? Well, we have had an arrest. It's not in this country, but we have had an arrest, and it's over in Great Britain as Prince Andrew has been arrested. Over there. Here's an article I'll talk about from the AP. Former Prince Andrew was arrested and held for hours by British police on Thursday on suspicion of misconduct in public office related to his links to Jeffrey Epstein, an extraordinary move in a country where authorities once sought to shield the royal family from embarrassment. It's the first time in nearly 4 centuries that a senior British royal was placed under arrest, and it underscored how deference to the monarchy has eroded in recent years. King Charles III, whose late mother lived in the motto "Never complain, never explain," took the unusual step of issuing a statement on the arrest of his brother, now known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Quote, "Let me state clearly, the law must now take its course," the king said. "As this process continues, it would not be right for me to comment any further on this matter." So even with that, you're seeing, people are still, I think, in some words, still trying to in a way protect. But I think that you're starting to see more people realize what the public, not just in this country but around the world, are kind of where they're at on this issue, and they want more transparency. And I think in recent years that's been a huge issue, especially in America, is people want more transparency out of their government. And there's a lot of people, including myself, that are very frustrated at how heavily redacted these files have been. I know that there has been a it's been a coalition that has been trying to unredact and get some more of these documents out while also protecting the victims. You have Representative Ro Khanna on the Democratic side, and then you have Thomas Massie from Kentucky on the Republican side, that have come together and have kind of tried to band with some other Democrats and Republicans to force these documents getting brought out, and they've had varying levels of success on that. You know, Josh, I mean, obviously, I think that we both, have issues with this, but, in terms of what has been released so far, what hasn't been released, have you been surprised at all at even the spots of transparency we've seen? Do you think we're going to get some more stuff that'll be unredacted? Do you think that there will be more people brought to justice in this country? What's your thought on all that?
I'm not holding my breath on accountability. I mean, Trump's DOJ has even said they're trying to move on from Epstein. So, and nothing that's come out in the 3 million pages that they've released so far has been really anything mind blowing. I mean, besides some of the Pizzagate stuff that was in there, that kind of confirmed that wasn't really a conspiracy theory. It's like this is something they're actually talking about. But I just don't see anything coming from this inside our country from anybody in power.
I think the thing that's interesting, you bring up Pizzagate, and obviously that was a thing when Hillary Clinton was running. One of her staffers, I believe John Podesta, was mentioned in that. And at the time, that was a huge thing that was being brought up by the early MAGA movement. And, that was one of the things that kind of, yeah, QAnon, exactly, that helped in a way partially maybe bury Hillary Clinton. Obviously there was a lot more baggage than just that out there, but you saw a lot of those people talking about it, and now you're seeing that some people on that side of the aisle are obviously starting to get involved with this too. And we've seen, obviously Bill Clinton's involved with this. Both parties have people that have been
Oh
involved.
yeah,
There's a lot of people in Trump's administration, like Howard Lutnick, that have had, that are
yeah.
emails that are out there too. So
Zero.
it's interesting because you're seeing kind of a divide right now in the MAGA movement. You're seeing probably half to maybe two-thirds of them that want this stuff released, but you're still seeing also some people that don't want to talk about this and kind of want to move on. And I think that that's kind of an interesting dynamic of what might play into 2028, because if we don't, if somebody isn't going to run on the Republican side with transparency, I don't know if they have a path to victory. So, where do you see the Republican Party and the MAGA movement kind of going on this issue? Do you think that this is something that may have an impact even at local races when we look to the midterms?
Um, I think this is going to be one of the most impactful things for the coming up elections. It's like if you're not on the side trying to get justice for all these people and get people arrested, I think you're going to be losing your reelection or trying to get into office. You're not going to win. People are done with being told that this isn't like these people in power aren't on a different level than us when it comes to the law. So I really think this is going to be a huge pivot point in American politics.
Yeah, I have to agree with you too. I mean, I think that we're definitely going to see some changes on this front, with people that run, and in terms of one, it might be a litmus test for some Republicans, especially young Republicans, that say, hey, if you're not going to say that you want, to take care of child
Yeah.
traffickers, and you want to, you're not going to focus on that, I don't want to vote for you. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what kind of candidates run going forward, if we're going to get more of those kind of, I'll say conservatarian types like Thomas Massey out there, or if we're going to get some people that just genuinely want the truth unveiled. I do have a couple more pieces I want to talk about on this, because one thing that's interesting is who is being protected, obviously, who is Trump trying to protect when it comes to these files coming out, obviously himself, but also it's a matter of who has dirt on him. And I think we're seeing right now, one country that is certainly involved with this, at least in some way, is Israel. And
Very
there's a lot of stuff with Israel out there. We're not going to get into all the stuff necessarily regarding Gaza and all our thoughts on that today. But just on this front, here's a piece from Anadolu Ajansi, which is a Turkish outlet. Emails show Israeli government managed security at Manhattan building linked to Epstein. Um, Emails released by the U.S. Department of Justice show that the Israeli government installed security equipment and managed access at a Manhattan apartment building run by convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The arrangements began on early 2016 at 301 East 66th Street, where former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak reportedly stayed for extended periods. Barak was Prime Minister of Israel, I want to say, in the uh, I believe mid 90s or late 90s or maybe even early 2000s. And then, of course, Benjamin Netanyahu has been one of the main guys ever since then. According to the emails, the security operation at Ehud's apartment remained in place for at least 2 years. Officials from Israel's permanent mission to the United Nations regularly coordinated with Epstein's staff on access and security matters. So it's interesting when you see that, and then you also see the relationship, obviously, that we have with Israel, not just in terms of supplying them weapons, but also protecting them from any accountability, really, on any matter. And that actually kind of leads to another thing that I wanted to talk about, which is an interview that was recently done by Tucker Carlson to Mike Huckabee, because he was actually talking about this issue with him a little bit and how the Trump administration is protecting some of these people. So I'm going to share my screen here with you guys so that you guys can get a chance to watch this as well. This is a 2-minute clip from that interview. Let's watch.
Still awaits you. This Easter, Hallows Pray 40 is Wednesday. It's in Israel. There.
Volume cut out. I'm not hearing volume.
Media was never something
There you go.
to us, but I would have no problem with him being extradited back to the U.S. You're the president's and our country's representative in the state of Israel, so I think it would fall to you to advocate with your friend the prime minister to say, wait a second, we have a very close relationship. We're obviously the single largest source of outside funding for this country. How can you take an accused child molester and shield him from American justice, send him back to the United States? Have you ever had that conversation? No, because the prime minister would not be the proper person that may be in right, Israel. Pardon my ignorance, but that would deal with an extradition. It would go through their court system. And so the prime minister is separate, very similar to what we have in the U.S., where there is a separation of powers. So it would go through something other than the prime minister. Have you advocated to the courts, to judges, to anybody in the Israeli justice system? There has never been a request for me to engage in that. I would be happy to do it if the White House sent a message to me. I do work for the president. I serve at his pleasure. If anyone at the White House were to say to me, would you please go and make a case for it? But probably if that were to happen, it wouldn't come through the embassy as much as it would likely come from the Department of Justice at the U.S. in D.C. They would make the request. They might involve us, but they very likely would not.
That's a very interesting clip right there because, and I apologize if anybody had any issues with the audio in the beginning. I got that worked out. At least I had the caption so you could read the first few seconds of it. But you can see right there is even Huckabee saying, I haven't been asked to do that. Well, no crap. Of course you haven't been asked to do that. Because again, think about what that would imply and what that would mean if Trump wanted them to go and do something about that, or if the Department of Justice. No wonder they've been covering all this up, because Trump and a lot of his billionaire buddies have been involved in stuff that is very similar. And so they don't want anything on their hands if they're going to go out and try to, take care of somebody who was an Israeli person who ended up having child trafficking issues as well. We've seen in the past, there was a great CBS evening news. It might have even been a 60 Minutes thing that came out a few years ago that talks about how literally Israel is used from pedophiles in the United States to try to flee as a safe haven. It's actually crazy. That one case, if anybody doesn't know about the specific case that was being talked about in that clip, here's a good article from Al Jazeera on, and actually it goes right to your area, Josh, out in the Vegas area there. How was an alleged Israeli child sex predator allowed to leave the U.S.? A senior Israeli official was arrested in the United States back in August and charged with seeking sexual contact with a minor, only to be released on bail with no conditions or monitoring, allowing him to flee to Israel. The case involving Tom Artyom Alexandrovich in Nevada is now stirring controversy, with politicians and social media commentators accusing the government of interfering in the judicial process to allow the cybersecurity official to return home without facing justice. So again, when you kind of look at the connections that Israel has to Epstein, there's of course questions of him being a Mossad agent out there, and then you look at this stuff, it all kind of goes together, and you really wonder, okay, who's calling the shots here?
Yep. Doesn't seem like it's us.
Yeah, and so I don't know
Oh,
if there's a good answer how to how this can be fixed, but it's definitely something I think people need to be concerned about.
there
Go ahead,
was there
Josh.
was another case this month in February. It wasn't necessarily related to Epstein or anything, but it was an Israeli citizen who was running an illegal bioweapons lab in Las Vegas that was released and then fled to Israel.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're protecting so much of the wrong people out there, and it's really sad to see. And something related to child trafficking, we'll actually get into a little later when we talk about another issue. But I just think it's really Israel is something right now where it feels like you can pick an issue in this country, and there is at least some ties to how bad we are governing it on a national level. And I think that people just need to kind of start paying a little bit more attention to that out there for sure. And again, this is not even getting into any of the stuff that happens in Gaza. We're going to barely talk about that today. I do have an article that I'll bring up here in a moment when we get to another issue, but just something to keep in mind of what's really happening and why we're not getting more people arrested or charged in this country, and why stuff is so heavily redacted. So I think that's a good starter. And again, we wanted to touch on that. Let's go ahead now and switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about something else that's impacting everyone in this country, some way, shape, or form, and that's AI, artificial intelligence, where things are headed, how businesses will be able to adopt to it, and a little bit more off of that. The first thing I want to say is I think the biggest thing you're seeing on this issue right now is AI is powered and charged a lot by a lot of these data centers that you're starting to see pop up all around the country. And, obviously there's some environmental impacts that has. We've seen that happen in a lot of states kind of out towards the central eastern part of the country. I know that like Kentucky, Missouri, some of those states over there, we've seen it pop up, Oklahoma. But you're also seeing it a more of a local level because of how this is starting to get out to people. A lot of people that are protesting local governments to try to prevent it. I know even in this area here in Northern California, there have been some cities such as Vacaville and Fairfield where there's been data centers proposed, and people have gone to city council meetings trying to voice their displeasure with it and not wanting it to come there because they've seen the results of how it's been impacted in other areas of this country. Josh, I know this is an issue you wanted to talk about. I don't know if there's anything you've seen that's kind of popped up on that front in Nevada, but just generally, just give me your thoughts on AI, what your thoughts are on it, where you think things are heading, in general.
Uh, yeah, so AI, it does take a lot of energy. Nevada, we don't have anything proposed, I think, except in Tahoe, up on the Nevada side of the border. I heard they're trying to put one of the biggest AI data centers in the world up there. And I heard that's going to be a pretty nasty fight. But I mean, AI is going to be, I think, really the businesses that can afford the initial investment into creating the systems around AI are going to be the ones that control everything to do with AI soon because like these small guys can't afford all that overhead. so they're not going to be able to use it. So it's like I really fear for the small guy with how quickly and or how fast AI is progressing. Obviously, it's not going to be able to take out a lot of skilled labor jobs right now, but I feel like in the future, it's going to be able to, they're going to build entire systems around AI to then have robots come in and be able to fix that system. So, like, say 3D printing houses comes and takes over the industry because it becomes so insanely cheap that that's just the way to do it now. And then they build robots to come and fix any of the plumbing or something that goes wrong with the house. And so that takes out all the smaller businesses like AC, plumbing, all those type of guys, electricians. So it's just, I really think as a society, we're going to have to think about how far we really want to take AI. And what's really scary is Trump is not allowing the states to regulate AI now. So we're at the whims of the Trump administration on this.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point there because I think you're starting to see a lot more talk of, how much should it be regulated or should it be, just done away with. And but there's also, some Democrats out there, like I don't know why I'm blanking on his name, the governor of Pennsylvania, who was supposed to could have ran for with Kamala Harris. God, that's gonna kill me right now. But I know that he's taken money from a lot of people who who've been involved with AI and who've been a part of that. Um, there we go, Josh Shapiro. Sorry, I had to get that out of my. I was
Yeah.
having a brain fart there for a second. But I know that he's taken money. I know other Democratic politicians have taken money by the tech industry, and people are trying get AI out there a little bit more. I also think it's important to why I'm not fully pro getting rid of it entirely. I think it should just be heavily regulated. Is I think you have to look at AI in kind of three different realms. I think you first have to look at it from the positive standpoint of there's light uses of it from people, and even though this still takes up resources and water, it's a positive for people who are trying to learn how to cook, right? So let's see, hey, give might go on Chat GPT or you go on Google and say, hey, give me a recipe to make a lemon meringue pie. Instead of having to buy a cookbook or spending the money out there, you can simply look that up, you find it, and then you go buy the ingredients, whatnot, or basic questions and whatnot. It makes people's lives a little easier in certain respects, and I do think there's a positive there. I mean, you can also say it's unnecessary, but I do think that there's a positive to where it can help people even in limited capacities. I would look at it from a second perspective, though, of also information warfare. And I mean that in the realm
Yeah.
of videos that are AI generated out there and how they can deceive some people.
Or
But
how the AIs are specifically designed from the start. It's
yeah,
like you look at say Grok versus Chat GPT, for example. It's like some will call one woke and one far right, but it's just like you could have said the same thing about Google and Yahoo back in the day. So it's just like it's kind of weird where we're at with all this. We're really in a warfare for information, and it's literally left versus right now.
yeah, and again, it's programmed to try to divide people. I
Yeah.
100%
Divide
agree
and
with you, and
conquer.
they're programmed by people and by billionaires for that main reason. So the focus isn't on them.
I don't know
Um,
if it started as like I don't know if that was the main reason though. I feel like that just is a afterthought of every like of the algorithms. Because I think they because the main thing they wanted to do is just keep people on their platforms as long as possible. And that has turned into what we see now. And it's really bad for our society as a whole.
100%. But another thing on just information warfare, just journalism in general, as a person who is a sports journalist and covers stuff, is you're starting to see basically AI writers basically writing their own articles based off,
Hmm.
certain games and stuff. You're seeing that, I know, at the high school level, some at the college level, and that's going to start taking over, some of those jobs. Writing those kinds of stories is going to be interesting. But my biggest concern, and where I kind of want to touch on this today, is the threat of artificial intelligence to public safety and
Police
security.
state. Yeah.
And what you're so firstly, in terms of just well, first off, let's talk about the economic side of just public security in terms of just job security. Here's a good piece from Yahoo Finance. Amazon is to replace 600,000 jobs with robots. We've seen in recent years, I think the first person I remember really bringing it up was Andrew Yang in the 2020 primary in the Democratic side, was talking about the dangers of AI and there needing to be UBI, knowing what was coming because he's been in this realm, that it was going to replace a lot of jobs. And now you're kind of starting to see the impact of that 5 or 6 years later. So here's the article. As the second biggest employer in America, Amazon currently employs around 1.5 million workers. Between 2018 and today, Amazon has onboarded hundreds of thousands of workers, effectively tripling its workforce. But the giant company may be planning a departure from extreme reliance on human employees in the coming years and decades. According to internal Amazon documents reviewed by the New York Times, some departments within the company are planning to replace employees with robots, impacting up to 600,000 roles. The document showed that Amazon hopes to avoid hiring more than 160,000 people that it would otherwise need to staff its U.S. warehouses by 2027. While it's not clear how quickly or extensively automation will affect Amazon's workplace, the possibility of large-scale job replacement may be alarming to workers, especially in an already tight labor market where job security remains a top concern. And so you're starting to see this not just with, excuse me, with Amazon. You're starting to see this, I think, in other companies that are starting to do this as well. We're starting to see cars that are self-driving cars. So I wonder how that's going to impact things going forward for potential things like delivery. I know that there's been a lot of issues with self-driving cars, but and that also impacts public safety. But I think that that's something eventually you're going to see as well. So a lot of people are going to get impacted by it in an economy and in a market where wages are already stagnant and have remained stagnant now for roughly about 15 to 20 years nationwide. I mean, it's different, I'd say, state by state. Um, so it's going to be interesting where we get to on this and what it's going to take. And I think it's just going to take really strict regulation and somebody goes in and isn't afraid to, bust some skulls. But you don't really see that leadership right now on the Democratic side. And that's why there's so many people that are members of that party that are voters that want to see a radical change because they can see where things are heading and that nothing's materially going to benefit their lives. Um, Josh, I know you've worked, or you still work for a big company out there as well. Um, I don't know if you feel like there's any changes that may come
Oh yeah.
there.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
I'm
maybe you
already
could tell me
seeing
a
it.
little bit about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're it's been hitting us pretty hard already this year, but we're trying to downsize because we just lost one of our biggest contracts, which was Amazon. Um, so the amount of work we're having to do is a lot less. So they have been downsizing. They actually just laid off more people this week at my building. So, and what they want to do is automate part of it so they can get rid of a lot of the problems that we're having, which I mean, I'm all for it because the part they want to automate, I've been saying should be automated because it's the very beginning. Cause it's like when we start and everything comes out, it's just messed up. The whole day goes bad. So what my company is doing is downgrading right now to I feel like then upgrade the entire system with automation. So the union is fighting them pretty hard on it, and I know they just opened up a lawsuit against the company as well.
And you're with the Teamsters, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah,
correct? Yeah.
yes, sir. Biggest union in the country.
Yeah, and so yeah, again, you're just going to see some fight from that there as well. So I think it's interesting how it's going to affect jobs, but In terms of just lives and livelihood, what I'm worried about is what we're going to see when it comes to just use of force, mainly because we've seen, a few years ago, those robot kind of police dogs that were out in China and maybe a couple other of those countries. You're starting to see it now that's, being proposed or being practiced and used by certain departments in the United States, such as the NYPD. I believe Atlanta's used some as well.
Vegas
That's a big
is
worry too.
Yeah, Vegas is starting to go heavy on the AI stuff. We actually got I'm pretty sure it was a sponsorship deal, or Elon Musk paid for them all, but they gave the Las Vegas Police Department a bunch of cyber trucks to use. So been seeing those around. But they also use like the AI, or not the AI, the drones to surveil. They have flock cameras around now, reading people's license plates and whatnot. So yeah, it's just becoming more and more surveilled.
Yeah,
I mean,
100%. Go ahead.
we're all walking around with trackers too. These phones track everywhere we go, and police can access it if a crime is committed. So,
And there's never been any regulation to stopping
yeah.
that too. You can go back to the NSA and how they've tracked before AI and all that stuff even became a big thing.
Oh yeah, Edward
Yep.
Snowden warned everyone.
Yeah, and I don't think enough people listened, and even the people that did, we haven't seen a big push on that, and that's still divided on what should be done with him. He's out in Russia and kind of speaking about countries with world conflicts. This is also something that's going to be dangerous and could be used in war, and we already have seen it used
Oh
in
yeah.
war. I'll bring
Oh
up
for
a
sure.
couple examples here. AI being used in Ukraine in the Ukraine Russia conflict. Um,
Psychological warfare.
yeah, AI in particular on the front line of its war strategy since the start of the conflict in 2022. This is an article from Forbes. When war broke out in the country where 300,000 people are employed in the tech sector, many startups pivoted to deployment that would aid the war effort. The government even set up a funding platform, Brave One, to allow companies to pitch defense technology products to investors. It is reported to have received thousands of submissions. Also, keep in mind how much money that has been sent to Ukraine. Again, I know that's another discussion there too. How much money should we have aided them? But I wonder how much of our money would have gone towards this. One of the major breakthroughs we've seen in Ukraine is the use of autonomous drones. While unmanned aerial vehicles have been used in many conflicts in the past decade, they are usually piloted by humans remotely. Today in Ukraine, drones have reportedly been used that are capable of tracking and engaging enemies without human interactions. In other words, true killer robots. There's also Bad One, a dog like autonomous robot designed by British company Alliance, which moves stealthily through combat zones and detects enemy placements as well as minefields using thermal vision. It can also carry ammunition to resupply soldiers while they are engaged in fighting. Oh, and by the way, not only have we seen that its ability to track people, it also has an ability, that kind of AI, to kill people. I'm going to go back. I mentioned it earlier that I had an article. Let's talk about Israel a little bit again here. This is an article from a study in Queen Mary University of London. Gaza war, Israel using AI to identify human targets, raising fears that innocents are being caught in the net. A report by Jerusalem-based investigative journalists published in Plus 972 magazine finds that AI targeting systems have played a key role in identifying and potentially misidentifying tens of thousands of targets in Gaza. This suggests that autonomous warfare is no longer a future scenario. It is something that is already here, and the consequences are horrifying. There are two technologies in question. First is Lavender, an AI recommendation system designed to use algorithms to identify Hamas operatives as targets. The second, however, the grotesquely named Where's Daddy program, is a system which tracks targets geographically so that they can be followed into their family residences before being attacked. Together, these two systems constitute an automation of the find, fix, track, target components of what is now known by the modern military as the kill chain. And we've seen a lot of people who are civilians have been killed over there. So the big worry I have is, and we're going to talk about another potential conflict that can take place here in a moment, but how are we going to start seeing this being used when it comes to wars that we may potentially be involved in? Now, we've still been involved with bombing countries ever since we've been out of having boots on the ground, even in Iraq and Afghanistan. But if those wars happen today, I mean, what are we talking about? The damage that would take place then? We already saw how many lives were impacted in those wars during the war on terror. I mean, honestly, it's getting to the point, at least for me, when I was younger, I was really worried about nuclear weapons and I was a big component of, decreasing nuclear warheads. Over time, I've kind of realized that it's not necessarily the worst thing to have countries to have that buildup as a defense mechanism. So I'm not even necessarily against the people or countries having those anymore. My biggest worry, and we're starting to see it on like the doomsday clock that's taking over, is AI, and AI could potentially be used in warfare that could destroy humanity.
Oh yeah, look what China's building.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I mean the I forgot who said it, but the quote is World War III is going to be fought with technology and drones, and World War IV is going to be fought with sticks and stones.
yeah, and a lot of people have talked about that with World War III. Were probably mentioning it in terms of just like hacks and things that could shut down
Yeah,
economies. And while that can be a thing, we're starting to see it could be even potentially worse than that. And again, the big thing that I bring up on this is that there has been no regulation that has been put in place by the federal government. It's only been built up more because they are making money off of this, because these politicians are taking big money when they run for their campaigns from these companies that are building up this kind of
Citizens
technology.
United.
Yeah. And again, I think that that's something that needs to be brought up, is the Citizens United ruling
It's got to go.
from back in 2009.
It has to go.
And again, I don't know what it's going to take for that to be completely, overruled. I mean, you could stack the Supreme Court, but it's going to take somebody that has the balls to step up and do something like that.
Same with
So,
the term limits on Congress.
yeah, same with term limits on Congress. It's going to be interesting too, because even people who run for Supreme Court or their Supreme Court, they take money too.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's not
Well, they're
just the
making
people
money
in.
off the stock market.
Yeah, it's not just people who are running for Congress or running for president that take that money. Trust me, justices in this country take that money too, and we've seen that.
It feels
Um,
like everybody does at this point.
yeah, exactly, and part of it is it's frustrating because I understand, for some people, you got families and it costs money to run campaigns, but at the end of the day, you would hope that basic human decency would take over, but it never does. So yeah, just interesting stuff there. While we're on the topic of talking about some potential or actual world conflicts and things that could result in wars, let's talk a little bit about Iran, because there's some big worries that I have here. We saw last summer, there were limited strikes that were carried out by the United States. Again, I think a lot of those at the behest of Israel, and of course, Iran responded. They attacked Tel Aviv a little bit, and then things kind of semi cooled down a little bit from there. But it's looking like it's coming back again, because here comes
Bush
Steve.
2.0.
Here comes Steve Witkoff, one of Trump's big military advisors, going out, the special envoy to the Middle East, talking about how Iran is, quote, a week away from bomb making material. I think that Iran has been a week away from building a nuclear bomb for about 40 years now. And I mean, we've seen this brought up by multiple United States presidents. We've seen it brought up by Benjamin Netanyahu. It feels like every single year. We've seen it brought up by neoconservatives all the time that want to go in and want to wipe this country off the face of the earth. Meanwhile, nobody wants to acknowledge the full history of Iran. The United States overthrew the democratically elected leader of Iran back in the 1950s. So if people want to talk about, how crazy the Middle East is, how Iran has a lot of money out there going towards, certain other countries and forces out there, look at what led to that being the case, and look at obviously what else is involved. You can get into oil, you can get into a lot of different materials out there that we try to take over and use on that land. But it's just very interesting, you still seeing this being used, and that they think that that's going to make the American public buy it. I mean, overall, Josh, before I get into a little bit more on this, like, what's your take on this situation? Do you think that we're going to see an escalation? If you do, what do you think will ultimately be the end game here? What's your thought in general?
Uh, I mean, I haven't looked too much into the Iran stuff yet, but I mean, it just seems like it's just Bush 2.0. We're gonna go in there and something's gonna happen.
And I just hope it doesn't result in, tens of or hundreds of thousands of innocent people being killed again. We saw that happen in the war on terror. And again, like, we always want to talk about terrorism, and even this is the case, when you could look at so many different terrorist groups out there. And yes, I'm not going to deny there are radical fundamentalist people in any religion out there. I'm not going to deny that. And it doesn't even have to be religion. It could just be, people that are trying to find it out with their life, right? But like, I always look at this as like you have to put yourself in other people's shoes. If Iran
Exactly.
came over and attacked us first and killed, your family member or killed family members, of course you're going to be pissed off and want to respond back and kill them too. So when you hear people chant death to America, well, it's sad and obviously it's frustrating and infuriating. And yeah, you might have that reactionary pulse of, hey, we need to, do something about that. Also consider what those people have gone through to get to that point. And again, you think about what your government cares about, they're not concerned about peace. Peace doesn't make them money.
Nope.
That is something that just really frustrates me. The one thing I will say though is while people may have bought the war on terror, people are not buying any of this stuff with Iran. You
Oh,
have
hell
seen
no.
Trump's approval rating has tanked ever. It initially tanked when he did that limited strike, and it has been tanking right now. Trump's average approval rating in the Real Clear Politics polls is 43%. Now, I will backtrack for a second. I will say, well, his approval rating is tanking and it's not looking good. I also think that this is one issue where the left has been a little intellectually dishonest because they're trying to, talk about how low his polls are, how, they always focus on the lowest rated polls, of course. There are still some polls that have him high. It's concerning. Don't get me wrong. It's concerning he's still as high as he is, in my opinion. I'm not a Trump fan. But if you look at where Obama was at this point of his second term, where Bush was at this point of his second term, Obama was at 41%, Bush was at 42% in February of 2006 and 2014, respectively. Now, you can also say, hey, it's different because, they were a consecutive two-term president where Trump has been a separated two-term president. But still, if you look at that as just a combined two terms, this isn't something that's like completely out of the realm of what we've seen before. However, this is an issue right here where I think if he does do something with Iran, he is going to have George Bush like poll numbers where he might dip down to 25%. How low ultimately do you think that Trump can get with his approval if we do see a major conflict like this? Do you think the MAGA movement will stay with him, or do you think there will be a major siphoning off?
I mean, I think the only thing really, actually, I don't even know if I could say that. I was going to say the only thing that really would get them to stop supporting Trump is if there's real hard evidence that he literally raped like a child. But I mean, at this point, I don't even think they would believe it. It's just like they're so against anything that the left is saying. The MAGA movement does not believe like literally anything you tell them that is happening.
It's funny because
It's
I've watched a lot of videos recently on like some major cults out there, like Nexium being one of them. And I look at like these leaders like Keith Raniere or other cult members, and and they're it's not like two and two. It's not like a perfect similarity, but there are a lot of things that run hand in hand with a guy like Trump too, So I don't know, but I mean, I'm kind of with you at this point. It's like, what would it take, and would they even, leave him at this point?
yeah. I mean, yeah, at this point it's like I feel like those numbers aren't going to drop too much further, but who's behind him is who's behind him. And the people that I see that have been Republicans and that are continuing to support this, it's like this is some of the stuff they actually voted for and want to see happening. So it's just like these are the type of people in our country. It's like you just gotta come to grips with it and figure out what to do next.
100%. Well, we have one more topic to talk about, and I know that we me and you, I think I think it's fair to say I feel like me and you when we chat agree probably about 75% of the time. But obviously there are certain things we disagree on respectfully, and this might actually potentially be one that we do have a little disagreement on. This is a fun topic to close out the day. We wanted to talk about something that's still very important, but is a little bit more localized and kind of about just culturally where things are at right now. And that's that's the what we're seeing kind of with some of these protests regarding ICE. We're starting to see them a lot more, even at the high school level. And it's kind of interesting to just compare that to what we've seen with youth protests in the past for major things over time. With wars and everything else. So first off, let me go ahead and bring up this article by The Hill, talking about some of these ICE protests that we're seeing at high schools. Hundreds of students suspended, schools under close watch over anti-ICE walkouts. Hundreds of K through 12 students across the country have received detention or suspension after participating in classroom walkouts to protest ICE efforts. Such anti-ICE or ICE out walkouts have increasingly popped up after Renee Good and Alex Preddy were shot and killed by federal immigration officers in Minneapolis last month. But officials say leaving school grounds is not a form of protest protected under the First Amendment for students, and Republican leaders are warning of consequences for those who participate. Quote, I applaud Mustang Superintendent Dr. Charles Bradley for suspending 122 students who walked out of class to protest, said Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt on X last Wednesday. Young Oklahomans, free speech is sacred, but truancy robs your future. Stay in school, build skills, and make your voice heard responsibly. But as the Trump administration presses ahead with its aggressive immigration agenda, walkouts could spread, with some students objecting to the Trump policies generally and others marching in the names of detainees they personally know. So I know, even when it comes to this area up here, I've seen people, even at the high school me and you both attended, that walked out, and, there were a couple hundred students that are walking out. Seen it at a lot of high schools, even, some in areas where it feels like it is maybe more of a conservative area of the county or of the area that I'm in. You mentioned that it's a very anti-ICE area where you're at. Is this something, when you've, kind of been, going to, or leaving from work or break, or even when you're driving around, are you seeing students at schools, even in your area, that are kind of starting to protest as well?
Um, a few high schools in the area do. There's some up in North Vegas, not necessarily the like Henderson area I'm in, because I'm more near Henderson than anywhere in Vegas. But yeah, I don't remember if we had any real protests when we were in high school. Because what has changed, I think, is kids are getting into politics younger and younger and younger. Like, even my dad said, like, we didn't even talk about politics. Like, he didn't even care about politics. So he's like almost 40. So it's like, and I think that is definitely something to do with social media, TikTok being probably one of the biggest. But these kids are definitely getting more involved sooner. And looking back at my experience, I mean, I didn't know anything in high school, so I kind of just stayed away from politics. But it's it's easy for these kids to be used, though, in my opinion. It's like, so that somebody, they really got to be critically thinking about what they're doing and the implications that they could have. And I don't really think they can understand that because of the life that they haven't lived yet. So it's just a touchy subject for high school. I'm all for them speaking up about their feelings if they really are studying this stuff and know what they're talking about. But a lot of them just regurgitate stuff they see online and talking points. So it's just kind of hard to take it seriously at times.
That's funny. It's
But
funny. I thought we would have a disagreement, but no, I think I'm pretty much right where you're at. I mean, I think the big things you see of people on both sides kind of talk about, because I've seen, Facebook comments, on articles that have written about people that have protested in the area, saying, oh, these kids just want to get out of class. They don't know what's going on. They're just going with the flow. They're going with what's trending. And I
mhm,
think that there is some truth to that. I'm not going to lie. I
mhm.
do think that there definitely
Oh,
is some truth
definitely.
to that. But it also completely undermines and discounts, especially people who are in families that have been impacted by policies that are out there from ICE and the Trump administration.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it discounts people that actually do want to be engaged with the political process, or even experience what it's like to be at a protest and see kind of what's going on and learn. And I think that, everything that anybody does is an opportunity to grow and learn as a human being and a person. And I think I've gotten a chance to attend a couple of protests for Palestine back a couple of years ago, and I'll be honest with you, going into it, like, I knew a little about the issue a little bit. I didn't know everything. And all of a sudden, like, there's somebody across the street, right? And a car's coming up and like they're having an argument. He's like, look at the USS Liberty, read about the USS Liberty. And I'm like, what is the USS Liberty? And then I looked up what it was and because I had no idea. And so I think that, any time you go to a protest, you have a chance to learn more about an issue that you're not for necessarily, for sure about. So I would say, I'm for it. And even those kids and some of those that are going just to kind of go with the flow, it's still an opportunity for those kids to learn and kind of experience what the political process is like, see how people kind of react and engage, and, also learn. Now, again, it's just a matter of being willing. And I think that there are some people that aren't, some people that are. It's hard to determine the percentage of people that actually, especially kids that truly care, when they're going to these protests or, want to actually know what's going on. But you're seeing it even outside of kids. You're seeing tons of people in big cities that are protesting stuff like this too. I mean, this is probably, up there with Black Lives Matter in terms of, one of the biggest protest movements that we've seen in this country, probably in the last 10 to 15 years. So I think it's interesting where it's going. I definitely I think that the best way to go about it, and I know a couple schools have done this, is there's talk with the principal and they say, hey, you have to get it approved from your teacher. We're gonna have a specific time. We allow you guys to leave. You have to be back by this time. Da 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 da. And I think that if there's a matter of control over that, for lack of a better term, I think that it works. I think if you kind of, just let, people go out for however long they want and you don't have a way of kind of vetting and knowing who's kind of coming and going, probably not the best thing. However, I'm all for these kids speaking up and making their voices heard. The one thing that's been interesting is legally, you have some people saying, yeah, there's the First Amendment right, but does that apply to, kids as well, or does it only apply to adults? And I think that that's been an interesting kind of legal debate there. However, my thing is, if you're in this country already and you're, I mean, you're a citizen, which a lot of these people are. I don't see an issue with it. You can, there's 14-year-olds out there that have a clue and know more about what's going on than some 41-year-olds.
Oh, for sure.
So I don't think, on this realm, age is something that should necessarily matter. But I definitely think it's an interesting discussion out there.
Yeah.
It,
I
it,
definitely think we need to get back to a standards type of country though, because like all standards have dropped throughout everything. It's like we need to raise the bar again.
I think another thing that is intriguing too is the people that do have a major issue with students protesting. They also, they talk about, hey, stay in school, you have a chance to learn, get an education. However, people that are a part of these families that are being impacted by Trump policies are also not going to school because of these policies. Here's an article from ABC7 out in Los Angeles. The recent immigration raids have impacted student well-being, enrollment, and attendance, while bullying has increased, according to high school principals across the nation, surveyed in a recent UCLA-UC Riverside study released, I believe this was back in December. Of the more than 600 high school principals surveyed, nearly 40% said students from immigrant families have been bullied. According to the study, some principals reason that such bullying directed at students from immigrant families emerges from a political climate that has normalized attacks on immigrant communities. A strong majority, nearly 64% of principals, reported that their high school experienced declines in attendance of students from immigrant families. The study showed that students missed school due to policies or political rhetoric related to immigrants. The findings mirror what the Los Angeles Unified School District reported a few days ago as well. So you see, the frustration of people not going to school because, they're protesting it, but then the policies that they support are also impacting some of these kids not being able to go to school. And, the thing with immigration is I think that the term strong border is used as a way to kind of already concede a point to trying to have some restrictions out there in place. Let me just make it clear. All of us in this country, outside of maybe 5%, want safety. It's all about safety. right? So how do we get that safety is the question. How we get that safety is you actually focus on true crimes that are taking place by people that are homegrown and people that are immigrants. And we've seen over time the trends that there are more people here in this country that are documented immigrants or that are people that are natural homegrown citizens that have higher rates of crime, felonies and violent crime than those who are undocumented immigrants. And there are, again, some people I'm totally fine with deporting and we should get rid of that are illegal. But what is the difference between an illegal immigrant and a legal immigrant? What is the difference between an undocumented immigrant and a documented immigrant? Paperwork. And guess what? One of the biggest agencies out there regarding how you go solve this paperwork problem is having their jobs diverted. So here's a good article right here I can talk about from the Cato Institute that came out. This is from, let me get a date for you. This is from September of last year. This is, sorry, let me get to it here. The USCIS. Sorry, I should have it up already, but I'm trying to find it. I'll start with this. Let's just start from the top and I'll read you the whole thing. Immigration and Customs Enforcement is diverting criminal law enforcement agents away from their investigations and enforcement responsibilities to conduct civil immigration enforcement operations on a massive scale. New data highlight how widespread the misuse of government personnel and resources is. Congress should prevent this diversion of appropriated funds in the next government spending bill. Of course, the Cato Institute also recommends policies to take place as well. According to ICE enforcement and removal operations records given by ERO to someone outside the agency who shared it with the Cato Institute, ICE is receiving assistance from nearly 17,000 non-ERO agents, including 14,500 federal criminal law enforcement officers. Separately, the DHS revealed in a now-deleted post that ICE has already trained and unleashed 8,501 state and local police task force officers who can independently conduct ICE arrests. It states that over 2,000 more are in training. Well, one thing that's important is Homeland Security investigators too. They're supposed to look into, child trafficking, other crimes that are going on from people that cross the border. Obviously, we just mentioned how police officers in local areas are kind of being forced to kind of look into this a little bit more. But it's diverting their jobs away from what they need to be looking at in their own communities. And the USCIS, what they're doing, these are the people that are supposed to process the paperwork of these people. And we've seen it can take months or years for some people to get a green card. I know some people in my life who families are not here fully legally, and they're worried about, ICE coming, or they themselves have had struggles, getting a green card because of just the process and how long it takes and the restrictions that are out there. USCIS, what they're doing now is paperwork that gets completed when these people who are trying to become legal citizens of this country, they go to their hearing, but they let ICE know about it to get their records up. And ICE will literally go to these hearings and arrest people right there when they get to their hearings to get those numbers up. So you're seeing these agencies that are all part of a more broader agency, these kind of sub-agencies, USCIS, HSI, whose jobs are completely going away from what they should have been and what was intended for, even when this was started decades ago. And now it's all going towards enforcement. And you're going to have so many people that are going to get thrown in these, what I believe are these concentration camps in this country or out of the country, that is going to completely destroy any realm of credibility that we have as a country. And nobody's going to want to come here. We've already seen that with tourism. We've seen that in tourism in many places in this country, including the Las Vegas area, including major parks such as Disneyland too. So that's just my thought. Again, I'm not pro open border. I do think that there needs to be a process. I just think that it takes way too long, and I think that our resources are being diverted and put into the wrong hands. I don't know where your thought is on that.
Well, my whole thing with that is, again, accountability. It's like nothing's going to change with immigration as long as our president, vice president are allowing millions, hundreds of thousands of people to come across illegally. Just like, obviously, we see the enforcement can be done under Trump. He's doing it. The amount of people that are getting through the border illegally has dropped dramatically. So it's like, we need this type of level of enforcement because we need to know who's coming in and out. But we also do need to make it easier for people to become citizens here legally. So it's just two things need to happen before that really goes anywhere.
Yeah, and I think that there's also a realm of truth to that. I will say I think a lot of people, and this isn't the case for everyone, because I know that there's also people from China that have come here to try to make money. I know there's people from other countries that have come here that isn't just Mexico and Central or South America.
Oh yeah.
But what happens is you also have a lot of these people that are coming here that have drug cartels, that have crimes back home, and they're desperate. So they see the process and how long it takes. And they're like, I don't have that kind of time. I want to escape to a place where I can at least have freedom from not being killed or starved or have issues in my country. And I want to come and try to get an opportunity. And there's not enough, they don't have the time to deal with how long the wait process is, too. So I think there's also a realm of, what is actually constituted as an important crime. Is it just crossing the border, or is it people that are coming here and actually do crimes that take advantage of a certain system? Or, I think that there's some differences there that definitely should be made. What I think should happen over time is we put more money into having more people that actually can go through this paperwork and properly vet people, have enough agents that can actually do that job, and over time kind of balance the budget to where you kind of have that move up as like ICE kind of moves down. I don't think ICE should necessarily be totally eliminated as an agency. That's where I differ from some of my friends on the left. I do think it should still remain, at least in some respect, but I think over at this point it's going to take probably 10 years, a 10-year or more span. I'd like to see the funding for agents in the USCIS that vet this information, and others kind of start balancing out and then kind of going apart from each other. I think that's a way that we could potentially solve it. Right now I do think enforcement is going to have, at least at some level, to be a solution, but I don't think it needs to be forever.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's just our thought there. But hey, man, this has been great. A great little first episode here. Again, we know we wanted to chat about some stuff that's really important, so touch on that. Again, we're going to look to try to get this out every Sunday. Can't guarantee it will be every week, but we're going to try to bring 3 or 4 main topics each week to you, and we're going to go through it. Again, we may eventually get some other people on here as well. We will have a name for you by next time for the show, too. This is, again, just our pilot. So we hope you've enjoyed. This show will be on YouTube, and then we're going to look to get it on a couple other platforms too. But Josh, before we go, is there anything else you'd like to add? Any other thoughts you have before we leave today?
Get out of your echo chambers and see what the other side's saying.
I second that as well. Well, that is going to do it. Again, for Josh Von Pohle, I've been Aaron Jackson. We will see you next time. Have a good Sunday. Have a good week. Take care.
Later.